Personally, I think this has been quite a bad experience for a lot of students, especially for students in schools and in the pre-primary section specifically because because firstly, for children, it's very important to be in contact with their peer group, with their teachers, and it's not just the text which matters, but a lot of interaction, and that has been affected. And also, I think I, at least from personal experience, I can say that I've been seeing a lot of kids who are missing out on education because of access to resources. So there was actually a report by UNICEF. I don't know if you've seen this. It's quite depressing, actually. It says around 1 billion children across the world are expected to fall back on education because of the pandemic. And it had data from countries across the world, and I had actually seen this because it had specifically mentioned that in India, only approximately 24% of families have access to the internet. And if you are saying that, and then you are saying that education has gone online, then three-fourths of the country are not having access to education. And we have to remember, in a country like ours, which is top heavy in terms of the age pyramid, so we have more younger people than older people, which would automatically translate into the fact that a large number of young people are not going to be getting access to education. And that's a huge problem because given that this is not a few months, when it started, we thought, okay, 2 months of lockdown and then we'll be back to normal life. And we all know that it's not going to happen very soon, which means this, right to access to education is going to suffer for more than a year, maybe 2 years, maybe three, we don't know. And then if you think about it, if children have fallen back, it's very difficult to get them back on track at par with their peer group. And there, as I keep saying, I think we are creating haves and have-nots when it comes to something as basic as a right to education. And it is, of course, a very large proportion of the population. And unfortunately, these are also the people who are already behind in their socioeconomic status, whose children are going to suffer the most. And there's going to be this rural urban divide. So, two ways it's going to affect the population. It is affecting the population. And another very scary thing that the UNICEF report mentions is something we don't really think about often, especially in the global south, is this global, urban-rural divide. It's going to affect girls much more than it's going to affect boys, because often parents don't want to get their girl child educated. And then when you have to choose, you would, send the male child to school 2 years later and get the girl child married. So this is actually creating a huge divide and different kinds of discriminations within the society, which is depressing. And I think it's even more depressing because a lot of people across the world, especially in the media, you see discussions about the pandemic, about how it's affecting lives of people, what the new normal is going to be like, about the healthcare system. Nobody is talking about education at the level it should be discussed. Another big issue, I think, which this is something that people are discussing, of course, across the world, how the pandemic has been affecting lives of women, especially because they are now in a situation where they're managing the home, they're working from home, and they have children who are undergoing online education. So, the stress levels are rising, and there has been enough discussion. I think it's a bit unfair to also the men, because it's not that only women do this. Of course, it's of course the majority of women have to balance maybe three fronts while men don't. But of course, even for men, I would guess it's a lot of stress, because working from home is one kind of stress. And then, if you think of a family, a normal middle class family, even if they have good resources, not every family has a gadget for each member of the family. So we have faced this at home. My husband and I are both scientists teaching in the same institute. We have classes. We have a class, and then our kids have online classes. So there are four people who need to be online at the same time. And it's not nice to ask the kids to use a mobile phone while you use a laptop. And there were thankfully spare laptops which we could use. And then one day, one of these laptops crashed, and there was a complete crisis because we did not have four laptops in the house. And having four laptops for four members in the family is really a luxury in a country like India. We afford it because we are in academics. We have an official laptop and a personal laptop. But most people, a lot of people around us that I'm talking to, most of my children's friends, they are attending classes on something as tiny as this. Imagine the stress on the eyes of the children. And then, of course, in the middle of a Zoom meeting where they're having a class, there's a phone call, and the father has to pick up the call because it's an urgent call. And then there is, a tussle. This is something that families are going through. There's a stress on eyes, there's stress on mental health, there's stress on family relationships. And then, of course, at the end of all of this, I don't even know how much the children are learning when it comes to real education, because it's not about passing exams, it's not about getting grades, it's not about going to the next class. I would be happy if my kids repeated their classes again, simply because I don't think they're going through learning as it should be. Of course, they're writing exams online and they're getting grades or whatever. But the point is, are they really going through learning as it should be in school? Learning in school involves learning from your peers. Learning involves competition. Learning involves sharing. All of this. It involves co-curricular activities. And all of this, the children are missing out on. But what are we doing about those millions of children who don't have a smartphone, who don't have a laptop, who don't even have access to a television or a radio set at home, even where countries are trying to do public education through TVs and radios? There are children who are missing out even on those. They are not going to go back to school in 1 year. And I don't know what percentage of them will go back to school ever in their lives again. So that is, I think, the biggest problem. And this is where we need to come in. Of course, we need to think about all the stress that kids going through online education are facing. But I think it's a bigger problem at hand because we don't even know those numbers. We don't know how to reach out to them. And how can we, right this that is going wrong? Even if we start after the pandemic, how well prepared are we as a community to address this? Where do we start? How do we start? These are open questions which nobody is discussing. In the Global Young Academy, we actually discussed this during our AGM, which happened again virtually. This was in June, early June. And then we as a group decided that this is really something that needs addressing. And we actually have decided that this is going to be a theme that we are going to address over the coming year. And one of the things that we are doing is right now we are brainstorming about how we can contribute. So there are ideas like, we can get the National Young Academies networks in different countries across the world involved in carrying out a perception-based survey, not really a one-to-one, door-to-door or any kind of survey like that, but more like getting perceptions to even get an impression of what people in different countries think has been the impact of online teaching on different age groups like pre-primary, primary, secondary, high secondary, etc. And create a status report based on this, which will add on to UNICEF's data, which was something which came out a couple of months back. And another way that we are trying to engage is we are trying to engage with other academies, the ISC, especially the International Science Council, Inter-Academies Partnership, and trying to see how we can address these issues and how we can all work together to maybe create resources. As I said, if people do not have access, then they do not have access. But then I think, we cannot say we will try and give you access now, because if you do not have a gadget, then right now there is not too much we can do. But I think the focus should be more on how to get them back into the mainstream education once the current crisis is over. If the children have gone out of school, how do we get them back into school? If they have not been able to attend lab classes, how do we give them resources which will help them to catch up with what they have missed, so that they don't have to lose their peer group and start 2 years back? Because that is going to impact their emotional health a lot. Because if you say, okay, your friends have been promoted but you don't get to get a promotion, you start 2 years behind, that's not a very nice thing to do. So if we can create resources which can be then given to governments, to policymakers, to academies, where people can work at a more grassroots level to give access to teaching modules, learning modules, maybe lab courses, maybe small videos, maybe hands-on kits, so that children can catch up on missed knowledge and be at least at par with the next batch, so that they don't really miss out and they don't have a complete blank. That's one kind of thing that we might be able to do. So this, we are right now in this brainstorming stage where we are thinking how we can participate and who all can contribute and what all ways. Good thing about the Global Young Academy is it's not just scientists. We have people from social sciences, we have people from law, we have people from human rights. So all of us are trying to work together to see how we can take this forward and contribute in a more concrete way to help children who are right now missing out to catch up. So that's one kind of thing. And of course, the second thing is to, even by beginning to create some status report where countries, especially in the global south, will be accessed through their young academies, and we get some impression of how life is being affected and education is being affected in their country. Mental health has become a major issue where especially undergrads, postgrads are suffering. There is no end to this, and this is going to stay. And my big worry is that the adolescents of today are going to be suffering from major mental health issues in the coming few years because of what they're going through now, because they're missing out on peer-to-peer interaction completely. And I think young academies need to work towards this even more, because young academies are really the people who can connect with this age group rather than senior academies. But as I said, the International Science Council is thinking about it on these lines, and there are people who have started discussing these issues. And I think we are eventually we are going to have enough people who are engaging in this kind of a dialogue, where we have people thinking about it. So recently, Inter Academies Partnership has come up with a call asking its member organizations to arrange for dialogue among themselves of how the pandemic has created further discriminations or disruptions in the structures of academics or education. And one of the things that we have proposed within the GYA's framework is again to talk about the lack of access to education. So I think we are also making a lot of noise about it, because we think also I think because this age group, all of us have, or many of us have children who are facing this. We can empathize with this much more. And I think this is why it's also a responsibility in some way to speak out and make people more aware and talk about it more often, and see how we can engage policymakers, decision makers, everyone to get involved and work together so that we can do something more positive rather than just talk about it.